Real Suns basketball came back to the Valley on Sunday night, but unfortunately it felt a little too much like the last time we saw Suns basketball at Footprint Center. A loss to the Adelaide 36ers. I'll break the game down on today's episode of Locked On Suns and tell you why, even though it's a little embarrassing, it's really nothing to worry about. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 5 seasons and a writer at Suns.com and Dime Magazine. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen. Welcome to Monday. Happy Monday. Again, we are everywhere for you. YouTube, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts or watch podcasts, you can find this show. So if you're just in for the first time, make sure you hit subscribe down below, hit follow. Make sure you do not miss us in your feed each and every single day. But today's a big occasion. Today's not just your normal show. The Phoenix Suns play basketball, and I just got home from 36ers Suns, a 10-point loss. The Suns favored by 20.5. People are panicking. It's a little wonky. It's a little bit of a weird, but I'm excited to dive in. I'm excited to talk basketball with you guys. I hope you are as well. Today's show brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. More from them later on the show. But as I said, the Suns were 29.5-point favorites in this game. They lose by 10. Very high scoring affair, 134 to 124. And yes, if you look online, just about any place you look, you're going to see jokes. You're going to see Game 7 jokes about the Dallas Mavericks. You're going to see Jay Crowder knew what he was right to leave jokes. Who knows what else you'll find? But I think it's all kind of BS. Because look, is it embarrassing? Sure. I'm not trying to shy away from that. I'll say that over and over again. You don't want to lose to teams in leagues that are worse than yours. It's pretty clear. I mean, if you're a soccer fan, you see this all the time because teams go and do these exhibition games in other countries, and if it's a Premier League team or a high-level European team, they're supposed to blow out their opponents. Sometimes they don't. That's what happened here. But a few things to set the record straight. One, there's this narrative, and Kevin Pelton of ESPN was tweeting about this, that, it's the first loss by an NBA team against a European opponent in X number of years, or it's the first time an NBA team has lost a game, a preseason game to a non-NBA, like all these different things since 2015, since 2006, et cetera, et cetera. One, this was only starting to be a common occurrence right up leading into COVID. And then the past few years, they haven't happened. So when you're seeing something that says, it hasn't happened since 2016, it's like, okay, well, how many games are we really talking about? Like, it's not like this is a humongous thing. Also, for the most part, these games aren't happening against the best of the best of the best. Now, I'm not saying the Adelaide 36ers are the best of the best, but for instance, the Clippers the other day, they blew out this Israeli league team. That's an even worse league than the National Basketball League of Australia, right? So you have to put some of that into perspective. But then just thinking about the game specifically, look, 2 things. One, nobody played more than 22 minutes. All of the starters played 22 minutes. In those 22 minutes, the Suns were plus 11. So they lost the game by 10. That goes to show you a lot of these bench players were minus 21. That's where the loss came in, right? Torrey Craig, Cameron Payne, Damian Lee. Those minutes were where problems started to come in, all right? Number two is the shooting in this game was out of control. All right. So Adelaide shot 24 of 43 from deep. I don't care if it's an AAU team, if it's Hillcrest Prep out in Phoenix playing the Suns. If for some reason they're making over half of their threes and they're attempting 43 of them and they're making insane hand in their face contested threes, you're going to be in the game at the very least, if not win it most of the time. And that's what happened tonight. Now, you could easily make the case, and I would not argue with you, hey, a team that was in the finals a year ago, a team that won 64 games in the NBA last year, those teams should not allow an NBL team to shoot 24 or 43 from deep to score 134 total points. And I'm not necessarily, I don't think you're wrong. Okay, I hear that. Monty also pointed out the 24 turnovers by Adelaide, 22 turnovers, by Adelaide. If a team is turning the ball over, just like I'd said about the threes, you could flip that and you could say, well, the Suns should have taken better advantage of 22 turnovers. So I'm not here to say this game was some sort of revelation and the Suns, it's actually a positive, and I'm here to tell you why. No, not a good thing. Definitely going to add to the bad vibes. The jokes are going to continue to roll in because of what we saw in Game 7, because of what we saw with Deandre Ayton being moody this week and Jay Crowder leaving the team and all of that. The Suns are going to have to earn the respect of the NBA community back. They're going to have to show NBA fans that they're not a laughingstock. But I know they're not a laughingstock. No realistic person is expecting that they're going to get blown out by bad teams like this every single night. That's not going to happen. And this was fluky for the reasons that I listed out. Okay? They're going to have to prove it. This was fluky. Those can both be true, as can the fact that it's not the end of the world, but it is embarrassing. But it does reinforce some questionable vibes. All of these things can be true. We saw a very bizarre outcome on Sunday night. It was not ideal of a way to start your preseason when you are a team that is trying to get back on track. But all of that said, this can be forgotten in days. Wednesday night, the Suns are going to play the Lakers. They've had the Lakers number for who knows how long. Nothing we saw tonight makes me think the Suns cannot go back out on the court on Wednesday, beat the Lakers, get their, preseason back to what it should be, and make everybody forget about this. That's totally within the realm of possibility. In fact, I'll say right now, I expect it. And I'll tell you why the rest of the show, some more specifics. Because this was a basketball game. This was Suns basketball. This was the first step of a season, and we did learn some things. So let's get into those. First, guys, today's show brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Look, I've not started a small business from scratch, but I have done a fair amount of hiring. We're looking for help at my day job right now, and it can be difficult. Even in a big place like I work, it can be very hard to know what you're looking for. And I've been on the other side of it too, and you can feel like you have every job you apply for, these amazing qualities that would make you a good fit, and you feel like, why am I not being seen? LinkedIn fixes that problem. Add your job and the purple #hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring after you list your job. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize the ones who you'd like to interview and potentially hire. And all of this is why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com betOnline.ag/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. For free. Terms and conditions apply. As I was saying, we did learn a little something in this game. All right. And a couple little somethings, and maybe not so little. I want to tell you first about Deandre Ayton and Mikal Bridges, what I saw being there, but what you probably saw watching as well. Break it down a little bit for you guys. Each guy, Bridges and Ayton, scored 22 points tonight. They both made at least 75% of their or at least 67% of their shots, at least 2/3 of their shots, and kind of filled up the box score, frankly. Bridges had 7 rebounds. Ayton had a couple of assists. Bridges also had 3 steals and a block. It was a big night for those two. And you look at the assists for Chris Paul, 12 of those. Booker didn't take too many shots all over. Overall, 5 of 8 from the field. So this was the Mikal and Ayton show. And it's an incredible sign of what's to come, because we knew this season, if everybody was bought into it, could finally be the year when other guys got in on the fun, got in on the initiation, the shot creation, the running of the offense. Finally, here in year 3 of the Chris Paul era. And the reason that I thought this should have happened more last year, right? So it's not a new idea by any means. We've all been talking about it since the finals, when, Mikal Bridges has 2 games where he's, shooting the lights out, being really dominant and everything else, and then very quiet games 3 through 6, right? Same thing with Ayton. He had high highs in the playoffs in 2021 and some low lows. And then obviously the way that the series ends against Dallas, where Chris Paul is just a shell of himself, Cameron Payne is not able to get anything going, and Devin Booker starts to force things and get, turn the ball over, get into bad situations. This had to happen, but I also think there's reasons to believe that this is finally when it was going to happen, and tonight proved that, because something I've been saying all summer long, it's easier to adjust, it's easier to commit to some of those difficult, dicey, challenging adjustments when you are coming off of a pretty bad loss, right? If you're 2 wins from an NBA championship, it's very easy. James Jones did this. Monty Williams did this. The players on the roster did it, to basically say, hey, if we do that again, we'll be where we want to be. And they were. 64 wins, a Cinderella season, amazing stuff. And then all of a sudden, they fall apart, right? And so that falling apart, I think, is going to be the launching pad for a season of more experimentation. I also think when you have won in all ways, shapes, and forms over 2 years as a team together, whether that's on the road in a Game 4 against the Clippers, closing out every single series in 2021 on the road, doing the same against the New Orleans Pelicans on the road in round 1 of this season, all of that, you don't need to win the 1 seed quite as much, right? So you can take a little bit of time to say, hey, if we have a game where, Chris and Devin don't have as much control over things, and maybe Mikal Bridges takes 20 shots one night, but he only makes 7 of them, and he has 4 turnovers, right? And it's a little bit of an ugly night. It's a growing pains kind of game, and maybe the Suns lose to a mediocre team because of that. Well, it's okay, right? So all of that went into tonight. And what we saw was incredibly promising. You had Bridges, and this even was, you can see it in their warm-ups. Like, I don't know how many of you, when you go to games, show up really early and try to see the warm-ups. I know that can be hard on weeknights, but if you're ever at a weekend game where you do have the day off for whatever reason and you're able to go to a weeknight game early, get there as soon as they let the fans in, which I believe is 5, maybe 5:30. You will be able to see the majority of players warm up. And you don't even have to be close. Just go to your seats and watch it, and you'll see these guys. They are working on these things, building it into their pregame warm-ups. You're seeing Ayton, driving from the free throw line in, battling and bumping with Mark Bryant. Rather than just the normal hook shots and some of these other things that he had done in the past, he's putting the ball on the ground. Jock Landale doing the same thing. Dario Saric doing the same thing. And Ayton is playing the way that they're playing and incorporating that into the training that he's doing day to day. Similarly, Mikal Bridges, if you watch him pregame, he was doing it at the open practice, doing it pregame tonight. It'll probably continue. These guys do these things throughout the whole season to build these habits. Basically, the workout that Devin Booker does pregame, a couple dribble, and Cameron Payne has done it for a couple of years now too. Catch the ball coming up the floor, a couple dribbles into a pull-up three from the left or the right wing. Booker has mastered that shot. Kevin Durant has mastered that shot. It's something where it can catch the defense off balance. It's an easy way to get a rhythm three if you have the comfort with that shot. We know Booker does. Bridges is trying to build that up. He's trying to build up more pick and roll. He had a nice dump-off pass when he ran a pick and roll with Deandre Ayton. He had a couple where he got the ball off of a rebound or off of a turnover from Adelaide and just took it all the way down the floor for a dunk or for a layup for himself. He got to the free throw line a couple of times. So Bridges, it's just going to be about those reps. It's going to be about becoming comfortable with the ball in your hands, not just to take threes or to get to that mid-range shot that he started to take last year, but it's about, hey, can you create for your teammates? Can you run a pick and roll? Can you get all the way to the basket in transition or if there's an open lane in the half court? For Ayton, this was vintage. I mean, I don't know if a fourth-year, fifth-year player can say vintage. Maybe that's a little bit getting ahead of myself. He's not an old man. I shouldn't be aging him in that way. But this was Pelican series, game 3, Ayton. This was, all of the best moments of Ayton kind of packaged into one game. Like, he, to me, is probably the player who I'm, if I'm given a game ball out, which a double-digit loss to a National Basketball League team, nobody gets a game ball. But he impressed me the most. And it's even simpler for him. I mean, obviously, right? Like, he's not going to be running pick and rolls. He's not going to be used like he's Nikola Jokic. He's not. But we know he has the skill set and the ability and the development to his game where he can handle catching the ball on the short roll, making one dribble, adjusting his body, adjusting his path to the basket, and creating an easy opportunity for himself. We know that he can catch the ball at the elbow and drive past somebody, use the threat of his mid-range jumper. Maybe it's a pump fake into a drive. Maybe it's, a drive, settle into the post, shimmy into the hook, right? Like, he has choices, right? He talked post-game about being patient, knowing when the help is coming, not allowing himself caught up by smaller players who are just there bottom, and then he makes it too early, right? Or he goes for a hook shot when he doesn't need to. Like, this is the process, reps upon reps, and I think the Suns are going to commit this year to expediting that. To, if you've gotten, the 10,000 hours thing with Malcolm Gladwell, right? It's a cliche at this point, but I feel like I saw an article the other day that it got disproven, but it's shorthand. We all get it, right? So, like, if Ayton or Bridges is on their way to their 10,000 hours of creating shots for themselves in the NBA, they might be at 5,000 right now because they've gotten so few opportunities to do it the past couple of years. Well, I could see the Suns trying to get another 5,000 in this year alone, right? Like, if you follow me with that metaphor. So tonight was just, again, an incredibly promising sign that the Suns are going to commit to that. Chris Paul was involved doing that. Devin Booker sacrificing some shots. That was a clear emphasis. Let's get those guys shots. Maybe the next game it'll be Cam Johnson. I think he needs to do it too. And Landry Shamet was somebody that Monty talked about. I'm a little skeptical that we'll see that. I think Landry's gotten a lot of opportunities to do that across his whole career. It's never really panned out. I still believe in his talent, but it's getting to the point where you just got to see it first. So, but I think between Bridges and Ayton so much tonight, and then what we know Cameron Johnson can do, a similar role, be really awesome. It's going to be really exciting. It's going to be really fun to follow. It's going to give the season a new meaning And if everybody's willing to sacrifice and buy into doing that, it could really reap a lot of rewards down the line. We'll talk about one more takeaway from one more familiar face on this Suns roster. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by BetOnline. More props, odds, and lines than anyone else this football season. Your number one source for betting info, including player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, in-depth articles, and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all sports wagering info with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. Told you about Devin Booker's MVP odds. As always, very low, lower than people who did not get MVP votes last year. You'll never, I don't quite understand really what we're doing with that. NBA basketball game odds, which I believe is just opening night. I think BetOnline feeds the sickos who are betting preseason. Again, 29.5. People made some good money if they bet on the 36ers. Opening night, the Suns are favored by 5.5 over Dallas. I'm not telling you to bet that game because it would really be a bummer if you bet on the Suns and then if like Book tweaks a hamstring and he has to miss that game and then the Suns lose. I'm not advocating for that. My point is BetOnline is already stocking for the NBA season in addition to the, overload of football stuff that they have. Head to betonline.net today to check it out or use their mobile app all day, every day. BetOnline, where the game starts. One final takeaway from this game for you guys, Dario Saric. So this one wasn't so much what he did, but what he didn't do. Dario was active in this game. People who were Crowder and Josh Okogie, who's dealing with a hamstring strain. So I assumed we would see Dario, but in hindsight, I should have known because pre-game we're interviewing Monty Williams, which we do every game, and he's talking about it's hard to find minutes for all the bigs. Now in my head, I'm assuming, all right, so we're not going to see, Bismack Biyombo potentially, maybe, Ish Wainwright, Torrey Craig, at the 5. Like maybe that's what Monty's talking about, but surely we'll see Dario, right? He's been such an integral part of this rotation. Monty's been really talking up all these different ways that we might see Dario used in the season. And none of that happened. Dario gets a DNP CD, coach's decision. So why? I think some of it maybe is still about the injury rust. I didn't watch him closely in Eurobasket, but Kellen Olson at Arizona Sports wrote a little bit about it. The highlights are out there for people. Some of the fans who I have seen talking about it online said they weren't very impressed. I saw the highlights of those games. Dario wasn't in very many of them because he wasn't a big difference maker. I tend to think that for me, that was a tune-up from a minutes perspective. That was just Dario getting back on the floor, showing that he can handle playing basketball for a long period of time and hold up. And he did that, right? I don't need him to play excellently, but maybe that's part of it, is Monty doesn't want to throw him back into the fire. I'm not too sure because he had a whole summer of getting back ready. He clearly wouldn't have played with the Croatia team in Eurobasket if he wasn't ready. So it's hard for me to say, he's too hurt to play or he's physically hampered because he's also not on the injury report. So maybe Monty's just slow playing it in that way. But it seems like the more likely thing, and Monty is basically saying this to us in as plain a way as he's going to say it, I think Jock Landale is just really impressing people. He has been the talk of camp through the first week. Players seem to like playing with him, and they seem to be pleasantly surprised by him. Monty Williams is openly praising him to the point where Monty is even having to say, like, let's back it up a little bit. I actually don't want to put too much pressure on Landale. So maybe some of it's the rust for Dario. I think more of it is Jock has just maybe superseded him. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know what it says about Dario if this young guy is already taking his spot. But if it is really just that Jock is exceeding expectations, then great. right? Like that's going to help the Suns more, I guess, if he really is that promising from what the coaches and his teammates are seeing in camp. Tonight he didn't play great. I mean, he came in his first stint in the first quarter and he was getting his hands on it. It felt like every loose ball. He took like 2 of his 4 threes, maybe even 3 of them on one possession off of some of those offensive rebounds. So his stats are a little screwed up from that one thing. He had 2 offensive rebounds and 2 3-point attempts. So if you take all that away, he ends up 4 of 7 with 4 rebounds. What is that? I guess still 12 points. He's going to get an opportunity to play here, I think, no matter what. I do think Dario will play. Monty confirmed that he expects Dario to get some time during the preseason and mix things up. I think those 2 guys could play together. I think either one of them could probably play with Biyombo, although I think more likely would be Dario to play with Biyombo. I think Dario can play with Ayton. And I think Monty will tinker with the rotation more tonight. He sort of told us pregame, like nobody's, we're not going to mix and match too much. He said in the next game, he knows for sure he's going to switch Cam Payne and Chris Paul, have Paul play with the bench, have Payne play with the starters. So we'll start to see that more. And I think that's where you'll start to see Dario. But I don't think it's an accident that Landale is kind of ahead of him right now. And that'll be something to watch because if Dario is either not playing as well because of the injury or he's just playing himself into shape or he's just not looking good right now, whatever it is, you start to think, okay, if he's not in the rotation, do we see some trade momentum because he's on an expiring contract? This is a contract year for him. He probably wants an opportunity to play. What does it mean for Landale? Like there's all of these questions start to come out because I was coming into this season very much assuming that Dario Saric was going to be a pretty big part of this rotation. I even tweeted today, and I guess maybe I misread it and I need to take it back. I mean, I said he was basically the 6th man, but after what Monty said, I'm not so sure. So that's very much something to watch as soon as the next preseason game. I mean, every night it's going to be something to monitor because if we consistently see Jock being ahead of him, then you could see on opening night that Dario is maybe not in the rotation, which is that's a pretty big change from what we all expected. When Dario goes down in the finals through last season into this training camp, I think all of us thought as soon as Dario can get healthy, he'll be right back in it. Now, maybe not so fast. That'll do it for today's show, guys. We'll get these recap shows going. I'll do a show after every game that I can. Definitely the weekday ones, sometimes Friday and Saturday. Look, I'm going to have a night to myself, but you can expect shows for basically every single Suns game all season long right here on Locked On Suns. So a big thanks for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Monday morning. Happy Monday to all of you, and I will talk to you tomorrow. In the meantime, go make Locked On NBA your second listen to catch up on all of our preview shows going up on that feed all week long, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.